Good morning. So today or this week, we're going to be working on comparing and contrasting two informational texts. So we want to work on kind of thinking about how those texts are similar, how they're sort of the same, and how they're different. We're going to be doing this with two biographies. The first assignment is going to be based on the work you did last week, sort of, with that person. If you didn't choose the same person for both assignments, then you'll have to pick one person for this, but most of you did. If you remember, I did Abraham Lincoln. I did both reading assignments last week on him. So he's going to be the subject of my first assignment this week, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. This assignment is also going to be on Google Classroom, and I made it into a document that you can type into, I think. So if you can get on Google Classroom, you can type right into the document and then save it and send it back to me to turn it in. If you want, I'll also put it on Dojo. You'll just have to print it, or you'll have to copy it or onto another sheet of paper like last week. So anyway, let's get started. So first, you have to read both texts completely. That's the first thing. It's really important, especially as we're not in school right now, that you guys are reading and reading and reading. So we're not going to skim and we're not going to try and cut corners. We're actually going to read the texts fully, okay? So this one, so let me turn my camera around. Here's what your graphic organizer is going to look like this week. So you're going to have a place for two different texts. You're going to talk about the author's purpose or the main idea for each one. And then down here, you're going to write a couple of sentences about how they're similar and how they are different. So last week, I read this text to you fully from the beginning to the end. And what I remember, so I have already reread this for this assignment. I reread it last night, actually, so I could do this video. You are also going to reread. Good readers read again. They read books more than once. Abraham Lincoln, so it starts when he's little, right? He's born in Kentucky. He starts to grow up. They kind of move around a little. This is the cabin that he was born into. Then we get a little fact box here. And then here, he's growing up. He's becoming a young man. He teaches himself law, which was really interesting. And then he becomes president. So he was in the House of Representatives and then the president. So this is moving kind of fast. You can notice there's not a lot of information about everything. Then it talks about slavery and how he hated slavery and he was against it. And so the Civil War began. There's a picture of his family, but there's not a lot of information about his family in the text. We just get this picture up here. And over here, it talks a little bit more about him being, he talks about the Emancipation Proclamation, a little bit more about how he was reelected in 1864. And then it kind of goes quickly into how he died, and then how he's remembered today. So this text, you can tell, is pretty basic. It doesn't do, it's a lot of facts, and it's a lot of facts that are kind of thrown at you kind of quickly without a lot of details. So on my graphic organizer, this is my first text. So National Geographic, Abraham Lincoln, that's sort of the title here. The author's purpose is to give I should write that in a better sentence. Give basic facts about Abraham Lincoln. Okay. This was kind of just really a quick overview. It's not a lot of details. I'm going to write, there aren't many details. Okay. Now, our other text, and I'm just gonna look at it quickly because I want to go ahead and fill this out because I can't get back down here until I've done both. Here was the picture book text that I found on Epic. This one I also read last week. I read some of it to you. This is by David Adler. Again, it's on Epic. Here's the cover of the book. When you go into the book, why is this not letting me? Okay. You can see right here, it already starts to be a little more detailed. But I mean, it kind of starts the same. We don't have photographs this time. If you notice over here, here's the cabin. This is an actual picture of it, a photograph. This is a drawing. So I'm already noticing one difference in these two texts. Oh, epic, come on. So he's growing up. They move. So you can see, like, it kind of tells us about, like, okay, sorry. So I had to fix the computer. So we're going to go back to this. So you can see here, we're getting some more details. His older sister wasn't in this one. Notice also how I have the two texts sitting next to each other with my graphic organizer here. So I've got all the information I need right together. So we hear about Sarah, that he goes into how they had to walk 2 miles to school. Also not in this one. Now this does talk about how they moved to Indiana. We knew that from the other text. Then we have this introduction of his stepmother. His mother dies and his father remarries another woman. Her name is Sarah Bush Johnston. You can see that here. Again, not in this text. Already in the beginning, I'm seeing that there are so many more details in the text on Epic than there are in the National Geographic one. So before we go too far, let's talk about just this book. So this author's purpose, you can see that he's she, I think it's by Mary Adler. I don't remember now. Maybe it is a he. He's giving us drawings. He's using illustrations to tell a story. This is when he builds this flatboat and goes to down the Mississippi River again, not in the other one. He's telling us a story of Abraham Lincoln's life. This text is not told like a story. This text is just giving us facts. We even have these like fact boxes here with photographs. This is much more of a standard informational biography. This one is a narrative. If you can remember back to when we were in school, we talked about a narrative versus a non-narrative nonfiction. So if you look again, this is definitely a narrative, like a story from beginning to end. This is not told like that. This is just sort of a nonfiction, giving us facts, just giving us a general idea of who he was. So the one that was on Epic here, the main idea or the author's purpose, I'm going to write this sentence better. The author is telling us a story of Abraham Lincoln's life with pictures and details. Okay? So, again, basic facts telling us a story. That's a big difference between this text and this one. How are they similar? Okay. So again, I reread this one last night. I reread this one a little bit this morning. And if you remember, you even can see from the pictures, look at so many more details. We know about his sons. We know what their names are. He had 4 sons, Robert, Edward, William, and Thomas. Their names are right here. So, again, lots and lots more details. It's longer. The author goes into much more detail. Now, here's the really sad part where he's shot by John Wilkes Booth. And then here's kind of how his funeral went. He was actually taken to a couple of different places so people could say goodbye. He was buried in Illinois, which is, not far from us. This author even gives us a timeline. Oh my gosh, that would have been so helpful if I was doing the timeline assignment last week, which I was, but I used this book instead. Maybe I should have used that one. How are they similar? Well, they both give important facts. So I'm going to write both texts give important facts about Abe Lincoln. And I'm going to abbreviate. I'm going to put A. Lincoln. Both texts are in chronological order. That means they both started from the beginning of his life. So if you remember, of course, this one goes into way more detail. So this starts at the beginning of his life. This starts at the beginning all the way to the end. Both texts are written in chronological order. Both texts are teaching us that Abraham Lincoln was important. The authors both had a similar message in that they both want us to know how important he was. They both ended their texts. If you kind of look here, today Abraham Lincoln is remembered as one of the greatest U.S. presidents, and then it tells you why. Same over here. Oh, come on, Epic. Sometimes Epic doesn't do what I want it to do. So let me go to the end. Here it is, like, people came to say goodbye to him. People called him Honest Abe, Father Abraham, Savior of the Union. Some say Abraham Lincoln was our greatest president. Both authors ended that way. So I know they both want us to know how important Abraham Lincoln was. Now, how were they different? Well, the National Geographic, I'm going to just say text 1 and text 2, and you can do that as well, okay? As long as you keep it straight. In text 1, the author uses a lot of photographs. Whoops. Sorry, this is a little messy. In text 2, the author uses illustrations. He doesn't use any photographs, actually, which gives you a big hint to how different these are anyway. So I'm going to go back through and I'm going to find some more differences. Again, this is a narrative. This is a non-narrative. I'm going to write that. Text 1 is not a narrative. It's not told like a story. Text 2 is written as a narrative. Narrative means story, beginning to end, right? So those are just a couple of ideas. Now, I could go into even more detail if I had a little bit more time. You can too. So here is how to fill this out. I will put a picture of this on Dojo. Please remember, you can do this on Google Classroom this week. We're going to try it. If you have a problem, let me know, okay? Yeah. So, into this week, you are going to be able to say, I can compare and contrast two texts, two informational texts about the same person. So, happy reading and do a good job.